we're all used to maybe bigger is better. Let's beef something up. Well, let's make it stronger, and that's good all around. But if you look at Bernard's drawings, I think they're very well thought out. And after modifying several things, and watching guys modify things to make them beefier, I've seen failure points happen downstream. So beefing up, let's say, the landing gear bolts or your engine mount bolts. Okay, let's drill that hole out and put a bigger bolt. It sounds like a great idea. But think about what that does engineering-wise. If we beef up the landing gear so much, where's the failure point? So now it's not going to be a bent bolt that you might catch every other annual. It's going to be a crack in the landing gear tubing. That force has to go somewhere. The straight gear with the straight axle, on the landing, that force goes up through the cabane section. It goes up into the wings. It goes up into the fuselage box, where all those beautiful triangle pieces of wood take the stress and distribute that energy throughout the airplane. When we went to the scissor gear, I'm going to call it, because there's two cross landing gears. There's the scissor gear, which is the bungees at the top, and they spread like this. And there's the Cub style gear, where it comes up through springs or bungees to a center triangle welded piece. That center triangle welded piece dissipates that energy back into the cabanes, back into that box where the strength is. Here's the problem with the scissor gear. At least this is what I found, and as talking to guys, and some of the guys wanted me to talk about this today. Every landing on that scissor gear pulls in on the longerons. Now there's that oak or that ash brace in the front, right? And I've seen guys beef that up with a strap of steel under tension and another strap of steel on the bottom under compression, and then run 5 bolts through it to make a sandwich. The problem now is, where is all that energy going? So the force of these landings over and over, with the scissor doing this all the time, pulling in on those longerons, begins to delaminate that ash strip. If you're not checking that strip on your angles, and that's hard to do, you gotta get a kid or something, crawl under there and stick a knife blade in there. Mine failed at 180 hours. And I thought, hey, steel straps, 5 bolts, what could go wrong? But I think what happened over time, and then I sold the airplane. And the new owner flew it over grows routinely, 2 big guys, 250 in the back and 200 in the front. And they were learning to fly on the airplane. So there were a lot of really exciting landings. And when you watch that happen and you watch the gears spread out and then snap back, that force is all going into that structure, into that cross piece. And over time, if you ever sit in the front of a peak that's got a steel strap in front, and maybe just a 3-bolt pattern, you can watch that steel come up. Every time it pulls in, it'll come up an 1/8, maybe 3/16 of an inch. You can see it bow up. So that's designed to be their intention. If I were smart, when I did my idea, I would have taken that ash cross piece down a bit and put a piece of steel in compression to help hold those longerons apart. What I did stupidly was run a thin strap across the top all the way to the plywood sides. So over time, with that bowing up and down, the ends of that steel started punching through the plywood sides, and I found after the fact cracks in that as well. Here's what happened the day of. My wife was out flying, terrific pilot. She learned on a Pete, moved up into a Clipper. She has her own little airplane. And she up and went, and I was watching the most beautiful wheel landing I've ever seen. And then the slow motion, retracting gear, Pietenpol, that tick, tick, tick out the grass, and little, grass clods come up. And she came to a beautiful stop right on the center line. I gave her points for in the touchdown zone on the center line, sitting on her belly. The damage to the airplane was the front longerons were pulled in. The sides were pushed out. The steel piece and the ash strip were completely intact in the sandwich with the steel reinforcement on it. Gear fittings did not fail. The bungees allowed the whole airplane to just squat down on its belly. When we lifted it up, the gear went right back into place, except for the break in those front longerons that didn't quite return to normal. When I took it apart, I could see that this delamination had been there for quite a while. There was grease, oil, sand, bugs underneath, about almost half from the ends coming in that was dirty. The only glue left holding was the center 12 inches. So thinking about how that was done, I'm trying to think about failure mode. Why did this fail? It should be a proven design, and the design actually is fine. It's what I did to it to beef it up, and it's the flying it beyond the airplane's design limits. I mean, how many of you have built a Piet that came in at the weight that Bernard built it at? I only know one airplane that comes in under 650. My airplane came in at 750, and I felt pretty good about it. But then, hey, let's add a starter. Let's add some instruments. Hey, I want to put a battery in, a bigger battery in. And eventually, the airplane crept up to about 770 pounds. So at 770, I knew about that. My wife and I aren't that heavy. We could still top it off and go fly it. But when I sold the airplane, these guys didn't think twice. And they flew it over gross all the time. And did some pretty spectacular landings. So what I want to leave you with when you think about, not only is the philosophy of the basic design is solid. Be careful when you think you're going to improve on a design that's been proven for a long, long time. If you can stick to the plans, terrific. Be careful about modifications, especially that make the airplane heavier. You all know, if you've flown a couple of different Piets, the difference between a nice light Piet and a Piet that kind of struggles to get out of its own way. A lighter Piet, not only is it more fun to fly, you're well within design limits. Once we start beefing these things up, and hey, let's take my buddy flying at 220 pounds in the front seat, boy, it just kind of gives me the willies when I see how heavy we fly these airplanes sometimes. And occasionally, boy, you get a bad landing, and when you do that 100 times, it beats on the structure. Be careful about the well-intentioned beefing up of structure. I've seen somebody drill out their engine mount holes to go with a nice big half-inch bolt. Well, the 4 little bolts, I've never failed. I've never seen an engine mount fail. And if it fails, it's going to fail out the bolt, which are easy to see. They're not painted. They're easy to get to. They're easy to inspect. And I highly recommend, at least every other condition inspection, go ahead and hoist the airplane up, pull your landing gear bolts. I'm amazed, after 1 year, I helped the guy do his condition inspection. We pulled it after 1 year of a nearly 800-pound Pietenpol empty, how much damage those landing gear bolts took on the scissor type gear. I'm a big fan now of the triangle type gear, the Cub style gear. So if you're at a point in your project where you have a choice, I strongly recommend going with this beefier design, because I think it takes the forces of landing and puts them all where they were designed to be. Where Bernard found through trial and error, how many pictures have you seen with a Piet sitting on one wheel or with a collapsed landing gear? Those are really early pictures. I think he figured out pretty quickly that that was the way to go. I don't know the origin of the scissor gear or why it started. Maybe people didn't want to have that straight bar across, thinking that you might taxi over something. But after flying now about every variant of the Piet, I've got maybe 1,000 hours in Pietenpols, 5 or 6 different engines on them, since I was a teenager. It's hard to beat the original plan. So I strongly recommend, if you're going to beat something up, just take a step back and think twice. Look at what you're really doing and where you're sending that energy, because it's got to go somewhere, right? So the scissor gear, if you guys are flying scissor gears or plan to build that scissor type gear, I strongly urge you, when you do your condition inspection, get under there with a nice strong light and a knife blade or something, and check that for delamination. So beefing up sounds like a really good idea, but I beefed it up so much that the only place it could fail was the airframe. Other than that, where's all that energy going to go? So there's your cautionary tale on that. Think about that, and try to fly the airplane within the design limits as much as you can. I think it's really important on an airplane as light as this, although they're beautifully strong. We don't need to be test pilots and flying it beyond its limits. So think twice about taking that 200-pounder in the front seat or giving your airplane out for somebody to fly. They're a joy to fly, as you know. They're easy to fly, but boy, you load this thing up and pound 10 or 20 hard landings on it, and it will take its toll. So that's really all I had to say. If there's any questions, yeah, bring them on. I don't have a lot of experience with the Scout. I've only flown it once. It seems like a sound-tested design. It's also a much lighter airframe. You're not going to be putting a lot of weight in there. As far as I know, that's sound, and I've never met anybody with one that's had one fail.
I started out, I've got the wood for the standard wooden straight axle, the original wheel. Should I change parts?
No, you know, and is Greg here? Greg did a beautiful job. Greg Cardinal's airplane. You know, look at his landing gear. That's the white and blue one right on the very first one. Take a look at his wood gear. I think that's a really sound way to go. I've never had issues with it. Most of the ones I've flown have had no bungees at all. It's just the soft pressure, the big fat tires, not the high pressure thin tires. And I prefer the fat soft tires that get rid of the whole bungee saddle arrangement. Yeah. That's a beefy enough gear, and all the energy is going right where it was designed to go in that style gear. So yeah, so take a step back and take a look at the design. Where is all that pounding going? And it's going into the strength of the airplane. That whole center section is all designed for it.
Just kind of thinking about the spoke wheels and all that.
I'm a huge fan of big fat loopy tires, but there's good things to say about spoke wheels too. Sir.
Bungee cords versus springs.
You know, I like bungees better, but they do, it's an amazing thing. I have a Piper Clipper, and I just helped a guy restore one. And with the bungees, when they get splayed out, when you take off or bounce, they snap back, and they snap back hard. This airplane hadn't been covered in 40 years. When I took this thing apart, the major cross piece, the cross tube between the longerons, where the bungees rest, supposed to be rubber bumpers there, those were long gone. The tubes were beat into ovals and were cracked halfway through. So the return is an issue. But the springs, I think, have less give both ways. So pros and cons. My favorite thing right now, maybe I'm jumping on the bandwagon of the rubber donuts. I haven't flown one yet, but the guys that are using them love them. You can put them in adjustable, you can put softer ones in the middle, harder ones to the outside. You can fine tune that system. There's a Pete in the next hangar that's got them. There's one out on the line that's got them. There's a Coyote that's flying around that's got them, and I think those show real promise. Low maintenance, they stand up to oil and UV, which bungees don't. And they seem to be very well behaved.
Where do you get the board? I was going to say, where do you get
You know, that's the question I knew you were going to ask. I would suggest find some teenager with good internet skills and figure it out. Do you have something? Yes. Sir.
I was promised by the gentleman next door that he would be putting an article in the newsletter about the donuts.
I would love to read that myself, because I think that may be the way to go. I'm in the middle of restoring a J4 with somebody. We just can't get the seals right. And we're looking to get a field approval to put those inside the casing and get rid of the springs completely and get rid of oleos and turn them into those, because they'll fit right down those tubes. It may be a way to, it's a viable option for a lot of airplanes, I think. But, I think they'll last a long time. And I just did a bungee job for somebody, and you just, any second you're going to kill yourself with any of the tools that pull those things out, including your Pete. You're under there with breaker bars and trying to wrap the stuff around, or pulling the gear off and put it on a bench. I think that'd be a dream if it works out. There you go. That's all I have, guys. If you've got anything for me, you can look me up. My last name's Bach, B-A-C-H. Happy to talk to you on the email or the forum. If you're building a Pete, you picked about the best airplane in the world to build. So good luck. Congratulations. You got something? Or are you waving a flyaway? Well, good. Well, you guys got good seats for Mr. Wynn. Thank you very much for your time and attention.